Hello everyone, this is Loco S, and today I have 7 tips for Invictus, or otherwise known as Fleet Week in the verse, brought to you by a Star Citizen whale. Admittedly, I am more of a beluga whale than a blue whale like some other Star Citizen whales, but having backed this project now for about 8.5 years, I feel like there's plenty of experience I have from all the Fleet Weeks that have ever existed to impart onto people who have recently backed, because apparently there are more people that have backed post-COVID than pre-COVID. So, figured it's time to actually impart this knowledge onto you. So let's get to it. Tip number 1. Invictus and Fleet Week usually drop with a brand new patch. This year it's going to be 3.19, and they're going to drop it probably right before Invictus. And when you do that, they're going to have you create a new character and set a starting location. You want to set your starting home base to Area 18 on ArcCorp, or if you do decide to set it elsewhere, there is actually another thing you can do that would really help for Fleet Week, and I will show you here now. We're going to go there. As you see, we are in ArcCorp. You will enter here from the city flight gates if you are coming in from another landing zone. You will see the ArcCorp gear ball and one of the main towers up ahead. Right beside this anvil arrow sign, you will see Empire. This is actually the hospital of Area 18, Empire Health Services. And you're going to go into Empire Health Services and you're going to set your spawn here. If I can find it, right around the corner here at Olympus Principal, and set your regeneration point to Area 18. This way, if there is something were to happen to you during Fleet Week, anytime even like immediate and aftermath for DefenseCon, you will spawn back here at Area 18 and not at your home location. The Invictus area, it's not like you're going to get shot. This is an armistice zone. However, the problem is that sometimes there's since every ship is on display, you could be exploring a fairly old ship that has some buggy areas, and you could easily clip into something, get stuck, die, get stuck into an area of a ship that doesn't have oxygen, and die. You could literally, a whole bunch of random stuff can happen to you, and that way you don't have to interrupt your Invictus and Fleet Week con experience by dying and being sent halfway across the standing system. Point number 2 that I want to make is that Invictus is inherently an unstable event in the sense that the servers are going to be slammed. There's going to be a lot of interest in people returning to the game in their first time in possibly 6 months. And not only that, I do believe that most Invictuses and most IAEs later in the year are also free fly events, where CIG opens up the game to people who have an account, but not necessarily have purchased the game yet. So there's a whole bunch of people trying out the game, seeing if now is the time to buy in. Therefore, the servers are going to be slammed, and they're going to be slammed hard. So don't expect you'll have any stability for things like trading, where 30k will wipe out your cargo and your ship. Just have fun with the ship hauls for the duration of the event, and go have fun. Try out the ships that are there. You can do things like combat missions where you're going to be able to go out, make your money, and then come back. And if you die, you're not losing any money that you put into the mission. Just you'll have to reclaim your ship. One other thing to note is there's also a lot of limited time events that happen during Invictus, so you can go ahead and try to make money on those. Have fun. Don't go too crazy with your hopes and expectations that you will have a perfect experience, but you can still have lots of fun at Invictus if you set your expectations accordingly. If you are going to be purchasing a ship that is currently in development and not currently flyable, be aware that you might not see that ship for quite some time in the verse. There are ships that they have routinely put on the development map that they claim that are being currently worked on, but keep in mind that ships like that they might say they're currently working on, like the RSI Apollo up above, was on the roadmap to be worked on for a little bit of time, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, it got pulled off. So just expect that if the ship is not currently inactive, if the ship is not currently flyable, you might not see it for a while, even if they are currently working on it at the moment. For instance, the RSI Apollo that's on the ad above my head, as well as the Aegis Vulcan, are both ships that I own, and I've been waiting nearly 5 years for them at this point. Partially this is because ships like those require tech, namely the RSI Apollo and Vulcan, they require drone tech. Drone tech isn't going to be in for quite a while, therefore I don't expect to be in for quite a while, and you should set your expectations accordingly before spending your hard-earned money. You will get a loaner ship, but it's not going to be the ship that you want. Point number 4, if you have a ship that you want to buy and it is indeed flyable, which is thankfully a decent portion of the ships that are currently for sale nowadays, definitely give the ship a try during Invictus. That's basically one of the entire points of both Invictus and Fleet Week in May, and the IAE, or the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo in basically the Black Friday Thanksgiving weekend at the end of the year. That's part of their whole point. Go to the expo, have fun in game, but also try before you buy. It's one of the greatest features of these online games, and you should absolutely use it to your fullest potential to make sure that you are making sure that your hard-earned money is being used intelligently. Fifth, and this is a very important note, especially coming from a whale, when buying a larger ship, such as this RSI Orion pictured behind me, do not underestimate the importance of crew for not only flying the ship, but actually running the ship effectively. You will not have access to computer blades or AI NPCs to help you run these ships for quite a number of years until the future. I wouldn't even expect 4, maybe 5 years from now, you might finally get the AI crew members to actually operate these ships and the AI blades to assist you in running some even smaller ships solo. But until then, and really even past then, your best bet to actually crewing your ships is getting human players to crew your ship. Do not underestimate the difficulty of this task. It is, unless you run with an organization, or even if you don't regularly visit and follow content creators with big followings, it is very hard to network inside the game. Spectrum on the RSI website and the F12 chat in the game itself, while can be useful at times, is a bit messy, especially sometimes if the chat, like most games, furiously flies by, where you could post something and in a matter of minutes your post or your whatever you're trying to say is gone, and no one will see your request, begging them to man your giant, massive 890 jump on a galaxy-wide cruise, even if you're paying a lot of money. Eventually, CIG will get around to developing better tools to help us get crew for your larger ships, as well as for you wanting to be crew on those larger ships to actually apply for those positions. But until then, both expect that you will need human crew and that it is going to be difficult for you to acquire said crew. Unless, as I previously mentioned, you either are a part of an organization or you follow a content creator and you're part of their Discords, and you can basically have a quick access to a lot of people who are more willing to actually play the game in a cooperative manner. I personally, on a quick note, I will mention before I get on to the next topic, I have an Argo Mole, and this is a constant until 3.19 and the mining update. It was always a difficult struggle to actually get player crew just because of how unprofitable it was to try to run a mole with more than one person. Hopefully, things change in this upcoming patch for that. For number 6, and we only have 2 more to go after this, so here we go. Now, number 5 was pretty big for ship buying because you definitely don't want to get a ship that is too big. You're just going to have problems finding crew. But number 6 is equally as important, and that's on the smaller end, and really all you need to play the game is a starter ship. Now, for your first starter ship, if you're buying this for the first time, you really don't need anything fancy. The Aurora from RSI and the Consolidated Outland Mustang are both very fine starter ships and are reasonably priced. The Mustang is actually a pretty good dogfighter on its own. And you can also, with the Mustang, equip 2 more size 1 guns on it to increase its firepower. And the Aurora is fairly useful because as a starter ship, it has a bed, something that not all starter ships necessarily have. Now, something to keep in note is that after you buy your first starter ship, the question becomes, should I buy more ships after that? I wouldn't recommend buying a second or a third starter ship unless you decide to play the game weekly, or if you really, really are passionate about the project. It's just one of those things where you really want in-game goals to actually make the game worth playing. Having a starter ship and working your way up to the lower tier ships is actually a good, quick game loop. Having 1 or 2 more dedicated specialized ships is really good if you really want to play the game regularly and you really want to start sinking your teeth into the more advanced game loops. For instance, if you want to do ship-based mining and you don't want to crew up on a mole, getting the Prospector is a good way to get started on that loop. However, keep it to 2 or 3 ships unless you really are getting into the game. 2 to 3 ships is the point where you're going to be able to cycle through your ships with regularity, and you'll actually be able to use your ships often enough. Once you start getting the 4 and above, you're going to run into problems where you end up picking 2 or 3 of the ships regularly, and your 4th ship will get not used very often, and then the more and more ships you buy, the more and more ships become hangar queens. Something that is if you haven't heard of the term before, basically it's an expensive aircraft object like an aircraft, where really a rich owner will buy an aircraft and it'll just sit in the hangar and collect dust. Not being used, still being maintained, and you're still paying for the maintenance and repair on it, but you're not using this expensive item and it just kind of sits there in the hangar looking all fancy and pretty. I would not recommend wasting your money on hangar queens. Keep it to 2 to 3 ships. If you are finding that this is becoming somewhat of a daily driver, maybe then consider it, but even then, 2 to 3 ships max, you're going to find your best value sticking towards that number. And my last quick tip for Invictus and Fleet Week is number 7. I highly recommend not getting more than 3 ships unless you love a ship, or you're starting to really play the game very frequently and you really want to spend the money. But even then, I would actually recommend that you can actually just put the money to better use in Star Citizen than buying more ships right off the bat. Some things that you can do that are actually fairly cheap and also support the game development are buying ship skins for ships you already own. There are more, as time goes on, more and more ship skins are actually getting released, so you can definitely go through and, especially if the newer ships, pick up a skin or 2. You can also pick up items like FPS gear. So there's an armor set called I think it's the aerial armor set, and you can pick that up. You can have an armor set. That way, every time the server wipes, every patch wipe, you'll have this set of not necessarily super unique armor. But you'll have a set of armor to start out with. That's in addition to your starting gear. Always useful. You can also get FPS weapon packs, like I said, more armor packs. You can also end up getting starting alpha UEC, and starting alpha UEC is actually pretty useful. It roughly equates to 3 different packages of $1 for 1,000, $5 for 5,000, and $20 for 20,000. These are actually, I would recommend maybe picking one or 2 of these up. Possibly, if you want more starting funds to begin your game with, I wouldn't recommend going over like 40,000 extra. I wouldn't recommend spending $40 to get like 40,000 starting alpha UEC. You only really need maybe to spend an extra $20 to get an additional 20,000. And even then, the only point to really doing that is to either set yourself up with a really good set of initial FPS gear, if you're planning on focusing more on becoming a Marine or a infantrymen in the verse, or if you want to become a trader and you want some starting capital to begin your economic enterprise with. So it's not necessarily something that you necessarily have to spend money on, but it is something that you can do to get yourself a little bit of extra gear to give yourself a little bit of a boost early on. But even then, skins are relatively cheap. Pick them up. FPS gear packs, relatively easy. You can pick them up. You can even, if you want to support the game and you really want to follow the development side of the game more than the actual gameplay itself, you can also subscribe, and you'll get some subscriber bonuses. You'll get access to the first wave of the PTU. You'll get access to special events within the Star Citizen community. You'll get access to a special newsletter that us regular backers won't get until months later. All sorts of fun stuff, and you'll actually be able to pick up subscriber items every month. And they're fun little flair items, and you can also get access to a store where you can buy previous years or previous months' flair items. And that's pretty much it for my 7 top tips for Invictus and Fleet Week. Keep in mind that once the Invictus Hall Show closes, the event moves over to the International Spaceport, where DefenseCon takes place, and that is run by Drake Interplanetary towards the very end of the convention. So keep that in mind. If you're wondering what's going on, why everyone's talking about Drake and DefenseCon, it is technically a part of CIG's Invictus Fleet Week. It's just in lore, it's separate from the actual festivities going on. So, hopefully you found these quick tips useful. This is LockOS, signing out, and until next time, have fun in the verse.